Hello, and welcome to Your Vote Counts, a public service program for the primary 2020 election that is being produced by Capital Community Television via remote technology in collaboration with the American Association of University Women, the League of Women Voters of Marion and Polk Counties, 4 neighborhood associations, and the Salem City Club. For the nonpartisan contested races, all candidates were invited and they all accepted. The questions were developed by the sponsoring groups and the candidates did not receive them ahead of time. The candidate was asked to prepare a 3-minute opening statement telling about themselves, their qualifications, and their vision for the elected position. I am Barbara Sellers Young, a representative of the League of Women Voters of Marion and Polk Counties. And I would like to introduce Brooke Jackson, running for the office of mayor, who will now begin with her opening statement.
Hi, thanks, Barbara. Thanks for having me on today. So my name is Brooke Jackson. I am a lifetime resident of Salem, Oregon. I'm actually a third-generation Salemite. My grandparents met on the campus of Willamette University back in the 1950s. So we've been here a very long time, and I attended all my primary school here in Salem, did 3 years at Sprague High School, and the year that West Salem opened was my senior year, and I transferred out there and was part of the first graduating class from West Salem. And I had the privilege to be involved in our amazing music programs that we have here in the city. So Salem has a very deep love in my heart. I went to school at the University of Oregon, so not too far away from here. I got my bachelor's degrees in both economics and business administration, and then I went on to do some MBA coursework through the U of O as well. I worked in quite a number of jobs over the years. I've done a lot of work in small businesses, and that's really where my passion lies. Small businesses are the greatest innovators and job creators in our economy, and they're just the heart and soul and the backbone of business in general. All businesses start as small businesses. I also worked for the state at the Oregon Employment Department for 8 years, so I have experience working in government, and I understand what it's like to function on that side of the government. So I've seen business from both angles, and I know that there's challenges that businesses face. So I wanted to run for mayor because partly because of my love for this city, and because I think it's a wonderful place. And we've seen in the citizen satisfaction surveys that the city does that satisfaction is going down a little bit, and that's unfortunate to see because we do live in such a wonderful place. And so I began to ask around about, what's causing that, and why do people feel that way, and how can I help? And one way to do that is to get involved in city government, city council, or in this case, running for mayor. I think I can do a lot to continue to make Salem a great place, and to just be a force for good in the community. So that's why I'm here today, and that's why I'm running for mayor.
Thank you, Brooke. Do you have any particular areas of the city that are of greater concern? And what would be your plans to address those issues?
The biggest one for me is the homelessness crisis that we see in the city of Salem, and that is something that I have found is on the forefront of everyone's mind, even the people who don't necessarily see it in their day-to-day lives or don't encounter it, because a lot of that's concentrated downtown right now. And people that I have talked to that live all over the city, that's something they're concerned about. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of the choices the city has made have not done enough to help solve that problem, and in fact, in some ways, have really exacerbated that problem. We've seen the the parks and areas where the homeless would tend to reside and congregate. About a year ago, the city went through and kind of swept those up, cleaned those up, and we saw the homeless population kind of migrate into the downtown area, start concentrating there, setting up tents. And then the city enacted a camping ban. So they moved under the awnings downtown. We're all very aware of this history, of course. And now they've partially repealed that camping ban and put a sit-lie ordinance. So the homeless people have gone back into the wooded areas. And so we keep shuffling around this population, this very vulnerable population that needs assistance and services. And really one of the biggest things they need is stability in order to be able to transition out of their unsheltered place in their life and to be able to move back into shelter. But the more we keep moving them and traumatizing them, the greater the problem is becoming. So the city has done some really good work in housing vouchers and helping people to not become homeless, to help keep them in their homes, and has done some work to expand housing options to get some more people into housing. But there's more that we could do. We need, for instance, a low barrier shelter in our city. We don't have any shelters here that have real low barriers to entry. And it can be incredibly difficult for someone to sort of clean up their lives, as you'd say, and be able to get off the streets. Let me phrase that differently. Higher barrier shelters usually mean that people have to be off drugs or not drinking in order to get into the shelters. And of course, that's a goal I think that we would want to see. But when you're living on the streets, it's incredibly difficult to be able to kick those kind of habits in order to be able to qualify to get into shelters. So when you have low barrier shelters, you give people a place where it becomes easier for them to overcome some of those first problems, so that they can then take advantage of some of the other wonderful services that we have in the city. So one of my biggest things is that I would like to see us have a low barrier shelter, and to continue to expand the current shelter capacity and programs that we have that are helping our homeless population.
Thank you. You approach a project such as the one you're talking about. It requires you to communicate with the community in ways that persuade them to engage the issue. And so how would you go about increasing the communication between the city government and the public?
Well, we have some really wonderful organizers and activists already in our community who are doing some really great work on this project already. And I think those are the kinds of voices that we should be listening to, the ones that are on the ground day to day, that are working with homeless people, that understand their problems. And those are the ones who have the best grasp on the situation. And those are the ideas. They're seeing what works and what doesn't work. And so using that information that they have, that the people who are actively helping with this problem have, and letting them be the voices and the leaders and leading that conversation about best practices, and allowing them and encouraging them to speak on that and to share their knowledge in public forums so that people can understand what the problems are and what the needs are, I think is an important way to address that.
Do you have, expanding the conversation a little bit beyond the area of homelessness, are there other initiatives that you would be wanting to pursue in the role as mayor?
I'd like us to take a look at infrastructure issues. A very hot button issue is the idea of another crossing over the Willamette River between Marion and Polk counties. And of course, that came up in City Council very recently. They had the opportunity to move forward on a plan and unfortunately chose not to. And I think that was an unfortunate decision that needs to be revisited. It's not too late to go back and reverse that decision and engage the partners and the stakeholders who are interested in that. There are a number of concerns with building a third bridge, including pollution and environmental controls and not wanting to damage our beautiful river, and how it affects neighborhoods. And so the vote failed because of some of those concerns. And so I think we need to take a deeper look at the things that held us back in moving forward on that plan so that we can find a way that's going to prevent some of the problems that people are worried about and still be able to move forward with the infrastructure improvements that we need to see in our city.
One of the things that is an extension of the issue of the second bridge is the whole issue of pedestrians and their safety on the streets and the increased number of cars in general. And so the whole issue of transportation in and around the city with the increased number of population that is part of what's been going on the last 10 to 15 years. So what would be your answer to make our streets safer in general?
Well, there again is another area where we've started to do some good work that definitely needs to continue. We've added bike lanes, for instance, dedicated bike lanes downtown, very clearly marked and dedicated spaces so that bikes aren't having to share driving lanes in some of the places that they were before. Now they have their own dedicated lanes, and that has certainly helped with safety. We've added things like the Peter Courtney Bridge that, added means for bikers to get from one area of the city to another. And there are some other pockets like that within the city where we can add bike lanes or we can add walking paths that would create safer ways for pedestrians and bikers to move through the city that already exist and that would help with that.
And you also talking about that, do you feel like these new bikeways and walkways would increase the vibrancy of downtown, or are there other things that you would suggest as well?
Oh, absolutely. I think those would increase the vibrancy of downtown. I mean, the downtown businesses, foot traffic is such a vital part of being able to get people in the doors, being able to have a walkable city. And we have a beautiful downtown area that just has lovely shops, and it's just a great place to go and spend some time. I love being downtown. And so if we have ways that make people feel that they're safe and we make it easy for people to travel there by bike or by foot, it's going to make it a more enjoyable place to be, and it's going to help with the businesses that are downtown.
Would be there anything else you would suggest to increase the vibrancy of downtown Salem, to make it a destination place, for instance, for a greater number of people in the population of Salem who might not just go downtown?
Yeah, parking can be a real issue downtown sometimes. If I go downtown, it's really great that Salem has the free parking that it does, because it's very attractive to just be able to go downtown and park and walk around. But it can also be difficult because it can be difficult to find a parking space. I don't know how feasible it is, but I have wondered about whether or not we can add another parking structure in downtown anywhere that might allow for some more of that traffic that's coming in to have a place to go, especially people that might be using street parking spaces who work downtown or spend a lot of time downtown. If there's a place where they can park, perhaps a very small parking structure that businesses only can use for their employees, to make sure that employees who might be parking on the streets would have another alternative of where to go, and we have more of those spaces open to other traffic that's coming in. The bus system does a good job of bringing people into the downtown area. And we have some things that work really well, like the West Salem transfer that goes just between West Salem and downtown. I have certainly used that one on occasion. And so exploring if there are other options like that. And obviously Cherry isn't owned by the city, but that we could perhaps partner with them, encourage them, make it easier for them to have some of those, shorter bus routes that's really easy to hop on, hop off, and get downtown.
And what do you think Salem is doing to deal with the issue of climate change? Do you think it's doing enough?
No, I don't think the city is doing enough to deal with climate change. One of the things that I've looked at pretty extensively is adding solar power to the cities. Solar power has become a much more affordable option for cities to invest in, and it pays back the cost of the investment within just a few short years at this point. And that's something that we can add to public buildings, public parks, any place that's using lighting. They make, fairly small solar panels now that you can put on top of street lamps, for instance, that can absorb power during the day and light it at night. Things like, that's just one example, but there are things like that we could definitely be doing that would make the city greener and without having to impact the city's budget in the long run, because again, it's an initiative that pays for itself.
Another initiative that has to do with infrastructure that people have been discussing a lot is Wi-Fi, and whether there should be Wi-Fi access across Salem. What is your position on that?
I don't know what the what kind of impacts that would have on, what it would take to install that, and if that's going to have some severe impacts on the city or not. But I know that there have been times when I've been downtown, I've been in a coffee shop or whatever, and you go to get on a Wi-Fi, and you can see Wi-Fi from 8 businesses on your one spot where you're in the coffee shop. And it just, in places like that are so high density, it does seem to make a lot of sense that you could have one Wi-Fi system that would service everyone. And again, that's not something that I've researched to understand the implications or the cost of, but it just seems to make a lot of sense that you could have a singular Wi-Fi system for at least parts of the city, if not for the city as a whole.
Well, I want to thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm again very glad to have had this opportunity to chat with you and to be on, and it's been a delight. And I'm grateful for all of the partners who participated to kind of put this together and make it possible with social distancing.
Yeah, right. So, and I want to thank Capital Community Television for their extensive efforts to make this program possible. And thanks to you, the public, for watching in order to become a more informed voter. If you've recently moved or need to register to vote, you have until April 28th to do so. Ballots will be mailed out beginning April 29th. Final message: remember to vote because your vote counts.